fans, welcome to the Muscle Car Modeler. My name is Revell. In this week's build I'm featuring here, this is a car that really needs no introduction here. This is a 427 Shelby Cobra. And this thing is a beast with a heck of a story. And I've gone over the story a little bit in some other videos on these. This is the fourth one I've shown on my channel. The most recent build I've completed of it. And although it's probably still about 10 years old, but I just really love building these, and they're just kind of a lot of fun. But when it comes to the Cobra and being one of the most copied cars ever, even from back in the day, they were just so hard to find. Even before they were super valuable, they were started making clones of them or replicas, because some of them are really not very faithful. But Shelby had actually produced just under 1,000 Cobras total. And we're talking all of the Cobras when they first came out. So the 62 through 66, I think, is the original lineage as far as it goes of the original batch. And being that most of them were small block leaf spring cars, starting with the 260 and then quickly going to the 289 when that became available. And then this is, of course, the 427 variant, one of them. But small block cars were a little over 600 and something. I forget the total number. And then the big block cars, these 427s, there was only 363 or something like that built in period. But a very rare car, but very storied past. But while he was racing his small block Cobras and having troubles at first, some teething and growing pains where they found out what would break and everything. He kept, developing and building, but, in the development stages, they wanted to put a big block in one of these. So they took a 390 and tossed it into one of the leaf spring cars. And Ken Miles went romping on that thing and testing it and everything. And he called it a turd. It was just all over the place. It was just the weight and the suspension just couldn't handle it. There was just a lot of issues with that car. And so, they did some other things and were testing, but they designed and developed a whole new chassis. So even though this, is a Cobra, it's pretty much, almost all new, completely new chassis. Leaf spring suspension is gone, went to coil spring suspension. And, a tubular chassis that was much bigger, stronger, 4-inch tubes. And just basically, went over the whole thing. Even the body, there's just a lot of things tweaked and done to the body, bigger opening, radiator opening, and everything. So they did a ton of stuff and slowly developed the car. So there are many different variants and changes, and even during the production, wide hip rears and narrow hip rears, wide tire cars. Many of them were turned into semi-competition cars. Because only 100 race versions were planned, and they ended up making about 56 of them, and 31 of them were not sold, so it didn't meet the qualifications. So they weren't able to race them in 65 because they didn't have enough made and they didn't make the qualifications. So that's why they're really 66 cars, but there are a ton of them built in 65. But it was just kind of a story thing, but it didn't have Carroll Shelby's focus, which was part of the problem, because Ford had pulled him away. He was being, used to help the GT40 program and develop that, which took him away from his Cobra Daytona coupes, his 427 Cobra Daytona coupe, or coupe anyway, which only one of those was completed, but not completed in period. But so there was a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of stories about that I really enjoy, and how his business was struggling and some of that. So like he was having trouble, his guys always developing the race cars and going off racing kind of took away from the production and watching the production side and making sure they're selling cars and getting these things out. But part of that I've read is because Ford guaranteed them $50,000. So Ford was paying them regardless of how many cars they were selling at this point. And like the Shelbys were somewhat suffering. For 65, he when it came to the Shelby Mustangs. He made a little over 500 cars. We was planning on doing 100, but there's a lot of street versions and race versions. There's a story that made me laugh about in '66. Ford had somewhat twisted the arm of Hertz a little bit and persuaded them to buy 1,000 Shelbys from him to help boost his sales and production numbers, and that even they had a hard time making that. But that was supposedly, and I don't know how true that story is, pushing the envelope there to try and get, um, Shelby's numbers up and help him financially while he was kind of away and keep, his people busy and everything too. So those are fun stories to read about, even though I really don't know how true they are. But when it comes to this particular build, I mean, it's really out of the box. And, I like these Revell monogram kits, even though there's really only 3 or 4 different versions. When it comes to the big blocks, this is the race car, which they usually come with both engines, depending on early version or later version as far as kit issued, where the early ones had the street windshield, but much later ones like this one had both. But I prefer the street windshield and kind of doing it as a semi-competition coupe, even though this one's got the Archway Ford decals, which I understand was somewhat of a real car, or Archway Ford was definitely a real Ford dealership and racing. But I don't know the specifics on that. I just kind of thought it was generic lineage decals originally, but I had fun. I had to build the matching car as well, so I had a little bit of fun with that. So there's, I had to build that one too, even though this one I kind of did it as a '66 and out of the scoops, but it's an R model. And there were a number of R models that were kind of updated to '66, even though they were all '65s. So some of them got the scoops, and whether they stayed. But I did show my original build. Here it is here, that I built a long time ago when this kit came out in '88. This was probably shortly after. And I couldn't get the decals to work, so it's one of the first ones I actually painted the stripes on. So this one is not my best work, but for the time it was. But still, enjoy this thing. And you can, one of the things I like about it is you can take the chassis off and see the whole underside, and see the engine, which this thing has a really nice 427 engine in it. Even though this one I kind of went crazy and spray bombed it in clear coat, which is why it looks the way it is. Which I even got it on the windshield and everything there. But just enjoyed this car. And that's my old one, and we'll get into the new one here. I'll show you the difference here in the detail. But I didn't paint that radiator cap on the expansion tank, which I should. But the carburetor's gold on this one, and just a little bit more detailing. And then the engine or interior there, real basic black interior, but we'll pop this chassis off too. So there you go. There's that motor. And I just, this is a really nice motor. It's got the cast aluminum Cobra 427 valve covers, which I always thought was really cool. The top loader there and all this stuff, but just kind of enjoyed building. And this one's got the much better tires. I really like these Goodyear tires that came on this one, because one, they match and they're big and littles, but not like the original one where they had the TRX, Michelin TRX tires in the front, and then the Goodyear tires in the back. And I put them inside out because they actually have the Goodyear on the inside, and I think they do have the TRX on the front as well. So, but that's how the original kits were in the 80s and 90s. And then when they came out with these tires, and now they have these tires but plain, they don't say Goodyear on them, but they have the blue line. But there we go. I'll kind of put that over there, put that off to the back. But and I painted that radiator aluminum there. So, but they've had a ton of these, and there's so many different versions of them. It doesn't want to go in there. There we go. Wiggle it. There we go. So there's that. And then just got to be careful when you build these, get this hood to fit. But this one I actually used the decals, and these decals would actually go on which I was pretty happy about. So came out really, really nice, and pretty happy with it, of course. But I've got like all the different versions. They've got the race version here, the street version, which I've shown, got a couple of those, and then they've got the drag Cobra, which is the Baldwin Motion King Cobra, and of course, the newest issue, which I don't have, but I swear I've got another 10 of these unbuilt, at least 6, and even the one with the figures, I've got that one, that limited edition one with both Ken Miles and Shelby in it. I've got that one as well, and I've had a couple of those. But just really enjoy these, and they're not. There's some issues, or they're not exactly perfect, but they're just fun to build, and I love them. I even got one as a work in process. Been kind of sitting for a long time playing with them, but I got so many. But just love the Cobra story and the Shelby story, and just got a ton of those, and plan to build many, many more. But that's just kind of modeling. You can always think of a new project and what's coming up. So that I'm definitely akin to doing that many times. So we'll squeeze this one in here as well. Looks so much bigger compared to these Cobras when you get it in there. But how's that for a group shot? Both Archway Ford 11s, and that one's pretty much out of the box as well. And I believe there's another version of that coming out, or at least in the Revell of Germany box. But anyway, that's kind of enough for this one. Thank you for tuning in, subscribing, and all your comments. I really do appreciate it. And you guys, you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next Saturday.